The death of Joseph Stalin in March 1953, coinciding with the end of the Korean War, marked a turning point. Not just for the Soviet Union, but for the entire world of the Cold War. European powers were left exhausted by the war, while the US and the USSR solidified their status as superpowers or giant states. The Second World War introduced the atomic age, radically altering geopolitical factors. The conflict was characterized by a state of permanent tension between the two superpowers that avoided direct conflict, given the danger of mutually assured destruction by nuclear weapons. Historians of the Orthodox current argued for the exclusive guilt of the USSR in triggering the conflict, citing the aggressiveness and expansionism of Stalin and the Soviet system. But what would have happened if the dictator, famous for his rigidity and purges, had lived 5 more years until 1958? Our point of divergence, PD, is simple and plausible. Stalin survives his stroke in 1953. The value of this counterfactual reasoning is to elucidate why De-Stalinization and the subsequent thaw actually occurred, seeking to understand what did happen by conjecturing what did not. The counterfactual method seeks to incorporate the principle of uncertainty to comprehend the past. In this alternative timeline, the USSR from 1953 to 1958 sinks even deeper into terror. Without the de-Stalinization process promoted by Nikita Khrushchev, there would be no gradual thaw. Rigid Soviet expansionism would continue unchecked. Domestic policy would be brutal. The purges Stalin had already planned would continue, affecting not only military and political cadres, but also scientific and technological development crucial for the atomic age. Academic discourse must be clear, ordered, precise, and substantiated, but in the Stalinist world, paranoia overrides logic. Sentences should be short and precise, no more than 27 to 30 words. But the truth in the Stalinist USSR would be long and dark. Geopolitically, the impact would be immediate and catastrophic. Despite allied collaboration during the war, for example, Tehran, Yalta, and Potsdam conferences, the Potsdam Conference already evidenced that the West and the Soviets represented distinct worlds. Under Stalin, the pressure on Germany would be relentless. It is highly probable he would intensify his attempt to force the West out of West Berlin, risking a direct confrontation. The Truman Doctrine, based on containment against totalitarianism, communism, would have hardened its responses, leading to a dramatic increase in military spending and tension. Key Cold War strategies were enemy containment, nuclear deterrence, persuasion, subversion, and espionage. Under Stalin, deterrence would have become more precarious. The Korean War, labeled the conflict type of the Cold War's first phase 194-719501953, and the first war of the nuclear age to pit East against West, would have been managed differently. Stalin might have insisted on greater escalation or forced reunification, challenging the US to a new conflict that might go beyond a limited contest. The conflict confirmed that future confrontations would be limited to avoid a world atomic conflagration. Stalin, however, might have forced the breakdown of this principle. Revisionist historiography argued that post-war American foreign policy sought economic expansion and maintaining a highly advantageous status quo for Washington. Stalin's continued aggression would have given the U.S. the perfect pretext to justify that expansion of influence and spending. The greatest drama would unfold in the Eastern Bloc. In 1956, the Hungarian Revolution was suppressed with tanks. With Stalin in command, the response would not only be equally violent, but any attempt at reform or dissent within the Bloc would have been immediately crushed. Without the minimum room for maneuver that the post-Stalin collective leadership allowed, resentment and absolute control would have cemented the ideological division of Europe. This environment of radicalized repression would even affect military strategy. The lack of talented officers due to internal purges could have hindered necessary tactical innovation and technology. To be a leader at the operational level, the study of military history and great leaders is useful. But the purge eliminates the gained experience. For the West, Stalin's continued presence would reinforce the orthodox view, leading to an unprecedented military escalation. The Cold War would have been a faster, less diplomatic arms race focused on nuclear deterrence. The future of warfare, even technologically, would have accelerated. Spending on research and development of complex technologies, such as semiconductors and artificial intelligence (AI), would have dramatically increased given the continuous threat. The decision cycle in combat would have demanded an acceleration in data collection and processing to obtain actionable intelligence. The application of mathematical models, considered the beginnings of AI use, which already emerged during the Second World War, would accelerate. Tension would have forced the U.S. to seek military leaders who possess similar and coinciding personal qualities, such as having been combatants in previous wars or having served as instructor officers. Furthermore, war in the 21st century already adopts new forms like cyber warfare, and the increase in research spending would have laid the foundation for the creation of specialized cyber warfare units much earlier. The impact on civilian life would be bleak. Historical rigor demands being exhaustive in data collection and honest in presentation. Data shows us that war always entails a human tragedy with millions wounded and missing, in addition to victims of disease and undernourishment. Under a living Stalin, the prioritization of military spending over quality of life would have continued, prolonging the war's aftermath and scarcity in the USSR. Party discipline would remain ironclad, without the cultural relief the thaw brought. The dramatic experience of displaced persons, evacuees, and refugees would have continued. Finally, had Stalin died in 1958, the legacy of Khrushchev and the Politburo would have been inherited under conditions of chaos. Potential successors would have vied for power without the unifying factor of de-Stalinization as an agenda. The internal collapse of the USSR could have accelerated, or conversely, its control could have hardened for decades, forging an even more paranoid and unsustainable system. The post-revisionist analysis of the Cold War, which evaluates it as a mutual interaction and essential antagonism, demonstrates that Stalin's early death was, ironically, a factor of stability by reducing the perceived threat, allowing a glimpse of coexistence. This counterfactual scenario proves that the survival of a single man can radically modify geopolitical factors and bring the world to the brink of direct confrontation long before the Cuban Missile Crisis. Counterfactual history, when explicitly tested against competing counterfactuals, compels us to consider the alternatives that contemporaries considered plausible and that were recorded in documents. Stalin's prolonged tyranny would have been one of the most feared and therefore one of the most plausible alternatives with devastating consequences. The true lesson of this history is not in the terror that could have been, but in the fragility of the peace we achieved. Stalin's passing changed the course of history, drawing us, at least for a time, back from the nuclear brink. If a single life can hold such weight in global destiny, what other historical decision do you think completely changed the Cold War? Leave us your what-if scenario in the comments below. If you found this strategic analysis rigorous and engaging, support us with a like. Subscribe to the channel for more military history and geopolitics documentaries. And hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into an alternate past.